tell you, like, the last year, or maybe the last 2 years have been so chaotic that it's the least amount of knowledge depth that I've ever had about any of the sports teams that I follow. So, like, that includes UK football and Reds baseball. Baseball's become something for me that's like, I watch it because it's on just for like the ambience and the experience of watching a baseball game.
Sure. Yeah.
But I do sort of feel like I want to know more about the Reds this year, because I actually think if they do even a little bit well, it could be a really interesting story.
Yeah.
Do you feel like Hunter Green's going to be who Hunter Green's been billed as? How do you feel about Eli De La Cruz?
Well, I mean, Hunter Green, he got the opening day start. So I don't know. I think Nick Lodolo should have gotten it over him, or maybe Graham Ashcraft, because Hunter Green, he was good last year, but he also, he gave up a lot of home runs. I feel like of the three, Hunter Green was the worst of the three. Of Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft, and Hunter Green, I feel like Hunter Green was the worst of those three last season.
Over the course of the year, but it seemed like he was sort of up and down. Like he had streaks where he was the best of the three, and then the worst. Yeah. So I think maybe the thought process might just be which name is going to put fans in the stands.
Probably.
He's something to watch. You know, it's not a strategic.
Yeah.
From a standings standpoint. And I'll tell you, I really don't know anything else about anybody else in the Central.
Other than Jesse Winkers with the Brewers now. So, but other than that, Yachty's gone. Man, is there anybody even, like, who's even noteworthy on the Brewers now?
I think I'm going to hate the Cardinals like 3 to 5% less without Yachty.
I think so. Ever since him and Brandon Phillips got into it back in 2010, my hate for Yadier Molina has never subsided 1%.
I'll tell you, with what happened with him and Castellanos the year before last, I didn't hate him less, but I respected him a little more.
Yeah, no. My respect. I can never respect Yadier Molina. Ever. Never. Brandon Phillips, he gave him a little love tap. That's all it was. And he decided he wanted to fight. Oh. Yeah, and I think that was the fight that ended Jason LaRue's career.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think those were contentious years for the Reds and Cardinals, because we were both sort of in contention every year. And so there maybe was a lot else there. I think Brandon Phillips just sort of got under people's skin, particularly Cardinals and Cardinals fans for those years.
And I love him for that.
Yeah. Sure.
So, 2010, the Reds hadn't been good. They went 80 and 82 in 2006. But prior to that, they hadn't been good since like 99. So it had been over a decade, really, since the Reds had even been in contention, right? And then I think the Cardinals were just like, didn't want, they weren't about to have it.
What do you know what the difference is in terms of footprint between the Cardinals fan base and the Cardinals market versus ours?
Cincinnati's a bigger city than St. Louis. But the Cardinals have just always been the Cardinal way. I hate it. Everything about the Cardinals, I hate. I hate them. I hate them more than I hate the Pittsburgh Steelers, if I'm being honest. But they're just consistently good in and out. So the fans are always going to come and see them play, But where are we going to go?
What else is there to do in St. Louis?
But where are we going to go?
That's a good question.
So where are the Cincinnati Reds fans going to go? I don't know. Where are we going to go?
Maybe the team will go somewhere.
No, they're never going to leave Cincinnati.
Wasn't he sort of threatening that?
Yeah.
He was saying, where are you going to go? But then also he was kind of saying, like, we could do
we'll sell the team.
Sell the team, Bob.
I hate them. Yeah. We don't want to ask our investors for money. So we'll just suck and you'll deal with it.
And you'll like it.
And you'll like it. God, I hate I think the Castellinis, there have been periods in the course of their ownership where they've actually tried. I'm not saying like the Castellinis have never tried to build a contender, because obviously they have. The years from 2010 to 2013, I think, speak for themselves, right? And then even a few years ago, they splashed some money on Nick Castellanos and Mike Moustakas, and then what was the Japanese player we had? It's not like they haven't tried, but I feel like we had a winning season in 2021. 2020 we went to the playoffs. We had a winning season in 2021. And then last year, they were just like, whatever. We're just going to trade everybody away. Even though we had a winning season in 2021. And there was potential, Suarez still had some years left in his contract. Jesse Winker was he was still he was in arbitration, I think, still. He wasn't even a free agent yet, Sonny Gray, we could have kept him. I don't know.
You could probably get Trevor Bauer for free this year.
See, I don't know why Cincinnati hasn't signed him.
Conspiracy theory time.
Oh, let's do it.
I do think so. So they have spent money, but if you'll notice that instances where they have spent that money, it's on players that have some charisma and have some weight to their name that would put fans in the stands. It doesn't feel like they've ever been that serious about putting a roster together because in 2021, like what you were talking about, it was so glaringly obvious how bad our bullpen was.
No,
like
the weakest link. It was the weak link.
But
we
like we had the worst bullpen in baseball by a lot, and it's like, why can we not pick up a couple bullpen guys if you're serious about building a team? Like maybe we could pay a couple of those guys instead of paying Mike Moustakas.
Yeah,
right. It didn't. It seemed like a business move rather than a long-term sort of team-building, thoughtful, strategic winning move. And it seems like that's always the approach. Like they'll throw us a bone every few years and give us a player to be excited about. And I also think that Joey Votto is probably the bane of their existence.
No. Yeah. Which he's not going anywhere.
And I want him to have an MVP season. For one thing, because I love Joey Votto, but for another thing, just out of spite.
Yeah.
I want Marty Brenneman to sit at home and complain about how Joey Votto's doing every night. Love Marty, but the Votto thing. And then also, I want the Castellinis to have to pay him.
Yes.
I want them to have no choice.
I haven't thought of that, but if Joey's slow out of the gate, if he has, if he's hitting 200 the first 3 months of the season, they're liable to just release him. And that just occurred to me. I haven't even thought about that, but I hope he's busting out of the gate. I hope he has an all-star year.
I think he will be. If the narrative that came out about his shoulder being injured for a long time and him playing through pain is true, and he's back to 100% now, there's no telling who Joey Votto is going to be this year.
Yeah, I mean the potential. I mean, even up to 3 years ago, I mean, he was really good.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't really think the potential's there.
Yeah. So Jeremy Snead.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. You and I, was it 6th grade that we met at Fallsburg? We're in a league.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And a funny story about that. I don't know if I told you. I used to bring. Is how much of a dork I was. I would always come to basketball games with my little personal Walkman CD player, and I would like listen to metal before I played basketball.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, you got to get hype.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I want to guess what metal albums you were listening to in 2001.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm not sure about the years, but I think I can probably tell you around that time what I would listen to before basketball games.
Was it Korn?
No.
Limp Bizkit?
No. It was a new metal.
Oh, Metallica.
The album that I listened to a lot, I mean a whole lot, was In Flames. The record that had, I don't remember the name of it, it had the gray, like white contour cover. It had Cloud Connected, and I mean I could sing the songs. I'm not going to.
No,
but
yeah.
It was before In Flames was really a huge in the metal scene. But I remember staying up all night watching like VH1 Classic, and there was some metal thing on, and the In Flames video came on, and it was like, and I was like, yes,
yeah,
who is this?
Those early days of starting in like probably 2000, 2001, those were my formative metal years. I remember coming home and seeing Killswitch Engage's music video to My Last Serenade for the first time.
How great was that record?
Oh my God, seriously. Well, I mean, the whole record is great, but I never heard Killswitch Engage until that moment. And it just completely like changed me. Like Killswitch Engage, they got me into like the heavy. music, you know? And man, I remember just watching that music video and I'm like, what is this? Because they got those awesome Jesse Leach clean vocals
Mm-hmm.
and the screaming,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just so raw and heavy. And man, I think I heard Lamb of God not too long after that, and then I was just changed forever. Yeah,
That's the metal that I've always liked, is that has the contrast, right? And also, I thought their cover of Welcome to the Machine was really cool. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. Oh no, it was seriously. Yeah.
But like across the board, I think, like, when I look back on it, I think of all the people that I grew up with, like across the spectrum of our values and interest, you're probably more aligned. You and I are probably more aligned than anyone else is with me, from just like personal values, music taste, taste in sports teams. And I really didn't see it coming, but like as adults, it's kind of been the same thing. We both love the Reds, and you're into the video and the production stuff. And I just think, I think it's really cool that over the years you've wound up in Lexington, and I've had the opportunity to help you purchase and sell a couple homes, and also just that we get to do this. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being the guy to actually do this work. For one thing, I would appreciate anyone doing it, but it's even better that it's you that gets to do it for me, because there's so much context there. So, when did you figure out that videography and film and media was something that you were going to be interested in? Because I don't remember that when we were kids.
All right, I'm gonna give a Lawrence County shout out here. It was James Ellis.
Oh,
and it was the first spark I got. It was Mr. Norton's journalism class, and
my cousin Todd.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And yeah, well, James Ellis was just sitting in that day, and we were doing some kind of performative work in front of the class, and I was doing a sports announcer, and I said something about Adam Dunn. I can't even remember what exactly I said, but he told me that I had a good voice, and I was like, oh, okay. And I'd always been interested in video work anyway, or do video, you know. I'd had a video camera then, but what really, and then that was, man, 10th grade, I think, sophomore year. But then, I graduated high school, and then I flunked out of Moorhead after half a semester in 2007. And then I didn't go back to college until EKU in 2012. And I started, like most people do, with history, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was working at a gas station at the time in Richmond, the BP. And Bill Bryant would frequent it on the weekends. And I didn't even know who he was, because we're used to WSAZ back home. I didn't even know anything about the Lexington market at that time.
Randy Yohe, Keith Morehouse.
Exactly.
Spencer Harris.
Right. And but then I saw him on TV, and I was like, wait, that's the guy that comes in. Because to know Bill is just the most humble human being of all time. And, he's not like, Bill Bryant, WKY, he's just not like that. And then he came in after I saw that, and I was like, I saw you on TV. And then, but we just kind of built a friendship, so from that. And then he asked me what I was interested in, and he told me to go into, journalism, like broadcast. And I was like, I will. And that was my first semester at EKU, so I hadn't even really done anything. So it was easy to switch. So I just went in probably, that next Monday, and I went to the history department. I said, I want to change my major, and I changed it to broadcasting, and so here I am.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think, man, I would probably spend 9 months agonizing, searching through the depths of my soul before I could make a decision like that. And so it's like, it's really interesting to me that you could just have that conversation with someone at the gas station, and it makes so much sense to you that you're just like, okay, I think I'll do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then he told me that, and I was like, you know what? That sounds a lot more fun than writing history papers. So, yeah. And then just knowing him, I was like, well, I know it's a business where you have to know people. It helps to know people. And I worked at WTVQ for like a month and a half. as a production tech, and just praying for the day that he told me to apply to WKYT, and I eventually did. And there was an opening, and I applied it, and he helped get me the job at KYT.
Well, you had to at that point. Once you told him, Bill, I did what you said. I changed my major.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. I guess he felt like he kind of owed it to me. But, I mean, I learned a lot when I was at WKYT. But I'm really happy with where... I mean, I was news at WKYT, and now I'm in creative services for Fox. And the way that it's changed there is just... It's just night and day compared to what... Because, we used to pay WKYT just to use their studio space just to produce a 10 o'clock news, and that was it. And then we got bought out by Nexstar, and they're like, well, we want you to be your own news, station. And I mean, I've been there for 3.5 years, and 2 of it has been, a year and a half has been as our own news, station, and it's been really fun. Yep.
Well, I would say just for me, apprentice at this, watching the Fox content, it does seem like Fox has the highest production values in the market now.
I'm not just saying that because I work there. We really do. And the equipment makes, it really makes all the difference, what you have. And we have, I'm not like, I'm just saying we have top of the line everything. And my boss has been a key part of that, which has been great. But, and then the people that he's hired also. I mean, we really just are, we're head and shoulders above everybody else in the market. I mean, I'm not just saying that. I just really think it's true, just based on what I've seen from other stations currently. So I don't know if they're just still shooting on ENGs or what. I don't know. But yeah.
I don't know what an ENG is.
Oh, it's just like a new style camera. It's shoulder mounted.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Were you interested in broadcast, like specifically broadcast journalism, or did him saying that to you ever make you think about going into radio?
I mean, if somebody offered me a job in radio, I think I would take it. But I mean, when you're right out of college, when you graduate immediately, your first thought is, I'm the most unemployable person on this entire planet. Who in God's name would hire me? And it was 6 months before I even got a job at TBQ. So I was out of college for 6 months before I got my first job I was freelancing. I was freelancing for Robert Tipton at Media Conglomeratory for 6 months. But then, TBQ finally called me and offered me a job. And I wanted a job so bad that I took it. Even if it was a production tech job, it's the lowest on the totem pole job that you can get. But I took it just so I can get my foot in the door. But I knew it was, it was only a matter of time before, I would get a job somewhere else. So, yep.
So can I don't think I've ever talked about this before, but 2009, 2010, I had actually attended a book club that also included Leland Conway. And do you remember Leland?
I don't. Should I know who that is?
Yeah, so he had the 5 o'clock hour on 630 WLAP from, I want to say like 2009 to like 2012. And it was sort of like local conservative talk. And then he also for a second had a TV stint with one of the networks. But I think his 5 o'clock hour show was pretty popular here. And so I've just always been like fascinated with radio as a medium and this whole theater of the mind concept.
Oh no, I love radio.
I can remember when I was a kid listening to Marty and Joe, the Reds games, and like riding to and from work with my dad in Ashland. And there were times when we would pull into the garage with his truck. We would just sit there for like a half an hour finishing the Reds game on the radio. And same thing at my papa's house. And Dad actually used to keep an analog radio with an antenna on his desk at work. So when he was working late at the end of tax season, he would listen to the Reds games while he did taxes. And my papa was the same. He would, just the most papa you can think of. He would go sit out in the garage, open the garage door, had one of those folding lawn chairs and set up a radio. And he would spend like eight hours on a Saturday or a Sunday, just out there consuming Reds baseball in the lawn chair, watching the grass grow, man.
Same.
But some of my favorite memories are just sitting there and participating in that with my papaw and with my dad. And a contrast in radio versus other mediums, in addition to your mind has to produce the imagery and do the work, is also that it's sort of long form content, and that allows a sort of depth to it that the TV format doesn't allow for, because you have all these advertising constraints.
Yeah.
And the same thing sort of applies to podcasts. I don't know if we ever talked about this either. That camera's off.
It's not recording. Anyway, I mean, we're just using... Yeah,
okay.
That's okay.
So, have we talked about this? Do you know who Dan Carlin is, the podcaster?
It sounds super familiar. I'm not just saying that. It sounds really familiar.
So, when podcasts first came out, I don't know. I know Adam Curry had the first podcast. I don't know what year it was, but like early days of podcast, I was sort of excited about it as a format. And Dan Carlin was this former daytime radio host who kind of had a political show, but it wasn't necessarily partisan. And so a lot of programmers didn't like it. And so he started doing this podcast. He started doing two podcasts. One is Common Sense with Dan Carlin. The other one is Hardcore History. So I would download episodes of those shows, and in 2007, I would listen to those for hours in the dorm room.
Yeah.
And there were no sponsors. The way that he would make a living is he would have this segment where he would say, like, buck a show donations, $1. If it's worth $1 to you, send me $1, and it keeps me in business.
Yeah.
And he got like, a couple hundred episodes in, and then iTunes wouldn't archive it back that far, so you had to send him. I would send him like $20, $30,
Sure.
and I would get the CDs from the archives of his shows. So probably in 2008, maybe 2007, when Facebook groups were first a thing, I was like, I wanted to sort of get more people to listen to his show because I always wanted to talk to people about it. And so I started a Common Sense with Dan Carlin Facebook group. And he and I emailed back and forth, and I was like, is it okay if I start this? And he's like, yeah, I'm not on Facebook. Just make sure, that people know that it's you doing it. That's fine. So I start this group, and I invite probably 150 of my friends to join it who were not interested and were just doing it just out of friendship, except for, 5 or 10 of them. But I had a lot of enthusiasm about it. And over time, his podcast grew, and so did the group. And then the group ended up with like tens of thousands of people in it. And Facebook adds me to this like power group administrators group that corporate put together of people who had started all these large groups. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think that group turned into the largest nonpartisan political group on Facebook.
Really? Yeah.
And eventually that it just got so big that like I had no interest in moderating it. It was a zoo. And there was this group of people that were like really dedicated into it. And so I just kind of let them run it, and I was just kind of, a deadbeat about the group. But every so often I would check in, and it was just like, what is this monster that I created, right? Yes. So Dan stopped doing the Common Sense show because things got so polarized in probably along about 2015, 2016 is when things got really crazy. He stopped doing the Common Sense show, but the group continued, and he actually joined Facebook. I'll tell you one thing about Dan. So in 2009, my friend Lance was working on Rand's first Senate campaign, and I helped with that too. And I emailed Dan. I was like, hey, Dan, so I have some Rand Paul connections, and I was wondering if you'd like to have him as a guest on the podcast, because I know how much you like Ron Paul, and it could make for some relevant conversation. He would probably do it because he's running for Senate. And Dan writes me back, and he's like, I think you mean Ron Paul. I don't really have guests. He had no clue who Rand Paul was at that point.
Yeah.
That's how early on it was. So But he ends up, Hardcore History becomes like top 10 shows on all of iTunes. It's for years, it is the top history podcast on iTunes. I think to this day, Dan's been on, I think, Joe Rogan a couple times, and he sort of blew up. But the interesting thing, what I'm going to with this group is, it was probably, I think it was the day after January 6th. I get on Facebook, and that group is gone.
Really?
No warning.
Many of that.
Nothing. Just this group that was like over 10 years old, that was really active and wasn't right wing. It wasn't partisan in any way. Just gone. And I think Facebook was just making an effort to eliminate political content from the platform generally. And I mean, it got contentious in there, but I found that really sad.
Yeah, it is sad that they would have that. I mean, that Facebook would have exert that much authority and delete without even without a warning. At least.
Yeah. So I mean, there are times where there were content warnings, but like, it's not like we're going to delete your entire group type warnings.
Yeah. No, I mean,
I just found that bizarre.
I've seen some Facebook groups, and I'm like, how do you guys exist? Legitimately.
Correct.
Yeah, and they're shutting down, nonpartisan political Facebook groups.
Yeah, and he was the type of analysis that he would do was so sort of like esoteric. Like he would talk about the Whig Party, and he would talk about how like modern America parallels ancient Rome, and it was those kinds of philosophical sort of conversations. Yes. And
Millard Fillmore.
If anything, it sort of leaned left, right? It was just strange to me that Facebook would have hostility toward that.
Yeah. Oh, but hey, if you're a human trafficker, yeah, free reign.
But that said, I'm still excited that podcasting is so big. It's the level of conversations that people are able to have is something that I craved like my whole childhood and my whole teenage years, and I consume, like I guess most people do now, like an absurd amount of podcast content. Do you feel like you do that?
I just really still mainly listen to music. I mean, other than what you send me to watch, I'm mostly just about the music. Although I have started getting into a podcast called Bad Friends.
Okay.
It's really funny. I don't even remember who the comedians are. A guy I work with, though, that's what we listen to when we go out on shoots together. And man, it reminds me of Opie and Anthony. I don't know if you used to listen to Opie and Anthony back in the day, but I get serious Opie and Anthony vibes, and I love it. I love it.
Opie and Anthony became XM exclusive a long time ago, right?
I think so. My friend, Derek, Derek. Yeah, he kind of got me into him back in the day too. But man, some of those Patrice O'Neill episodes on Opie and Anthony are just the cream of the crop.
Did you listen to Bob and Tom at all?
I listen to them every morning on my way to work.
Oh, you do now?
Seriously, no. As long as I've lived in this market, I've always listened to Bob and Tom on my way to work.
So, believe it or not, after I got my driver's license, when I would drive to Lawrence County High School, I sort of alternated between Bob and Tom and
John Boy and Billy.
John Boy and Billy.
John Boy and Billy, I told you. Yep.
And Morning Edition.
Morning Edition. Those in Morning Edition. I thought you were going to say Lex and Terry, but
no. Well, Lex and Terry too is in there, but I think I had in my head it was like
you're just mixing a little bit of everything.
Well, I wanted to get some news, and I wanted to feel like I knew what was going on.
I mean, John Boy Billy, they were more like skits, like radio skits, which were
Get Up and Go show.
Hilarious. Yes. Hey, big man, let me hold $1. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dude. So
I will say that Morning Zoo format was so much better in the 90s and early 2000s than it is now.
Without question.
Just because the environment allowed for so much more.
You can't. I mean, they're just so.
It's hard to be funny now.
I mean, I know I sound like a boomer, but you just, you can't. Yeah, you can't be funny anymore. There's. I mean, I see so many comedians that they're afraid. It's almost like they're afraid to try to be funny because they don't want to get canceled. And man, there are exceptions. Bill Burr's an exception. He doesn't care. Dave Chappelle doesn't care.
I think Dave Chappelle's leading the pushback on that, though.
Yeah. I mean, Louis C.K. is even, he was under a rock for about a year, but he's since even crawled out and he's doing shows now, So
I think the Me Too thing is kind of over too. Like Ryan Adams is back too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I was talking to my friend Jeff about Ryan Adams the other day, and he gave me like an 800-word essay on the Ryan Adams case and the investigation of why he should have never been in trouble in the first place. And as someone that is a longtime Ryan Adams fan who had sort of stopped listening to him, like the Me Too thing kind of ruined it for me. What he said, I can't recreate it, but what he said was so compelling. It was like, I was so appreciative. It was like someone was giving me permission to listen to Ryan Adams again, and that was such a gift.
You were like, thank you, finally. And the first thing you did when you got in your car was put on Ryan Adams, right? Yes.
Yeah. No, actually, I didn't even, on the computer right then.
Oh. You didn't even wait till you got the car.
It was like coming home.
Yes. Yeah.
But, and I'm sure that's contentious, but anyway.
We can edit that out.
So I'll tell you, we had, so from Winter League to Chico's class, homeroom, which was a fun time, freshman year.
Oh my God. Red and black. We were black.
Were we?
Yeah.
I was so mad about the teams thing generally.
Well, they started that
our freshman year.
Yeah, everything that my sister Megan told me was cool about high school evaporated.
Exactly right.
I mean, you were blocked. They did not hour and a half classes. They were blocked. You were with upperclassmen, and then we get there, and it's not. It's just like an extension of middle school.
I think I said to Christy Moore one time, I said, I don't understand. Like the whole point of being in high school is being able to interact with these kids that are older than us, and everything we've been told since 5th grade about what it would be like once we got to high school and we were prepared for, just gone. And I said, I don't understand this at all. And I think she said something to the effect of, well, you don't need to be in classes with seniors because seniors, a lot of them drink and they drive too fast. And I was like, do they drink and drive too fast while we're at school?
Right. Like, are they driving into the building? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Little did I know.
Yeah.
But I tell you, and I know a lot of your family. What I don't know a whole lot of to this day is a lot about your life prior to 6th grade.
Prior to 6th grade? I mean,
so like Jordan talks about. Everyone sort of has this narrative of their life. Sometimes we sort of write it intentionally, or sometimes it just sort of develops. So everyone has it. What is that story for you?
Oof. Well, I mean, long story short.
No. Long story long.
Yeah. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1989. Oh, you didn't know that?
No. I love Charleston.
No. Yeah. You didn't know I was born in Charleston, South Carolina?
No, sir.
Yeah, September 19th, 1989, and it was 3 days before Hurricane Hugo. So my dad was in the Navy, so he was stationed there in Charleston. And, I was born with jaundice, so I was under, like, emergency generators and stuff because, the hospital was out without power. And,
What?
Yeah. No, Hurricane Hugo to that point was the most destructive hurricane to ever hit the United States.
Right.
And I was right there in Charleston being born.
There's a song about being born in the eye of a hurricane somewhere, right? That's a thing, right?
Probably by Bob Dylan.
Yeah, okay, so you go ahead.
But yeah, and I lived there, I think, till I was 3, and then we moved to New York. Or no, I think we lived in Connecticut for a little while, because, again, Dad, Navy. But then we moved to...
Where were you in Connecticut?
I can't remember.
And then were you in New York City?
I know I think we lived in a duplex. Not New York City. No, we lived in a little town close to Saratoga called Ballston Spa. Yeah, I don't know if you ever heard of it.
No.
But, yeah. And it's close to Albany, which my dad still lives to this day. But yeah, and then when we were 5, my parents split up. And I've lived here ever since. So, yeah, we moved here. Well, we didn't really, it's funny, we didn't really move here. we were driven down here because it happened a lot because my dad, when my dad worked, and then it was like maybe a week later, he told my mom that he wanted to split. So, yeah, and then so we were just kind of stuck there because my mom didn't have a job, we didn't have a vehicle, we were just stuck, and I mean that was it. So we lived with my grandparents for, I think, 3 years, and then we finally lived in a trailer somewhere. I tell you, the two places that we lived outside of my grandparents, I didn't have a bedroom door.
Really?
Yeah. But yeah, and I still have a lot of memories from that trailer that we lived in. It was, I had my own room. I had to have my room. I was the only boy, but my 3 sisters all slept in a bed together.
Wow.
This is, I think, 2nd or 3rd grade. And of course, my mom slept on the couch, And I remember my dad drove the van down. It had been like 3 years up to that point, and my mom was just cleaning houses. But this was before she went back to school.
Mm.
And I remember he drove the van down, and I remember him sitting on our couch because his head was shaved. And I don't remember if he was still in the Navy at that point or not. But he came down there with his future second wife, Pilar. And I didn't even meet her till the next day. She stayed in the car. He came in for a little bit, and he took us to see Star Wars the next day because it was re-released. I don't remember if it was episode 4, 5, or 6. I think it was episode 4. It was re-released, and I remember we went the next day to see that in theaters. But it was like, I can't be in 3rd grade, but I don't remember anything before that. Like from the time that he left up until he came and visited us again, there's nothing there. Yeah, it's like the strangest thing. And then I remember a lot of things after that, but that period was just like, I don't know. I don't remember anything before. In those 3 years, it's just like fog. I don't know if it's like a trauma response or what, but I don't know. I just don't remember anything about that time before we moved to that trailer.
I think that there are times where people can't actively recall anything during a period of their life, but there has to be things that might jog your memory, like that you might associate where bits and pieces might come back to you. Like I remember scenes from my childhood from when I was 18 months old, believe it or not. I remember things from when I was virtually a baby, but I don't think I could put it together as a timeline chronologically. I'm sure there are years that are missing if I try to put it together as some kind of narrative. So it's not necessarily a trauma response. Do you have a relationship with your dad now?
No,
because I've never heard anyone mention him.
I've seen him, I think, maybe 5 or 6 times since 1995.
Wow.
Yeah. So we went up when my sister Megan graduated high school in 2006. He came down, and we actually all 4 of us, me and my 3 sisters, and we went back up and spent a week with him in New York. And that was 2006. And then he came down for my graduation in 2007. Prior to 2006, I hadn't seen him since that day in that trailer.
Wow.
In maybe 1998, 99. Yeah. That was, so it would have been like 7 or 8 years since I'd seen him. And then he came for my graduation in 2007. And then I don't think I saw him again until, I don't know. He came to Megan's wedding back in 2019. So it might have been another 12 years. And then I haven't seen him since then. So, and it's not like I don't want a relationship with him. I think it's just that it happened when I was so young and he lived so far away that I don't know if I just learned to live without him. I don't hate my dad. Like I can't say the same for some of my sisters, but I've never hated my dad. Because I guess I don't know if it's just my demeanor, and I've always just been more understanding. But I don't know. People do things, and then maybe he since regretted it. I don't know. But just based on things that my mom has told me, she said after his dad died, my grandfather, his dad, that he just wasn't the same after that, because they were really close. And then
where was he from originally?
My dad,
Mm-hmm.
in Boyd County.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. He grew up in Boyd County. But yeah, yeah. So I mean, people do things, and I can't. I can place myself in their shoes, and people react differently to certain situations. And I don't know what was going on in his head when he decided that that he didn't want to be with my mom anymore. I don't know. So, but yeah, I mean, I can't hate the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He just did what he felt like he needed to do. So, I mean, I wouldn't be here without him. So, yeah, I got to give him some credit. Yeah.
So you don't feel like that's had a huge impact on your psychology in life, or do you?
I don't know. I think I've got this tendency to always want to help people.
That's one of my favorite things about you.
Yeah, but I think it's to a major fault, and I think it's because seeing what my mom had to go through, and wanting to help and just be as helpful as I could, And I don't know if maybe that, but also just I had my papaw. He was basically my father figure growing up. For all intents and purposes, he was my dad growing up. So and then he taught me how to be, a proper person. Yeah, I think. So, yeah.
I don't think it's to a fault. I think there is no right way to be. Well, there is, but like Tom Sowell says, there are no solutions, only trade-offs.
It's true.
He means that about politics and economy, but I think so much of that is true about the way we live our lives too. It's like, if you're an open person and a person who tends to want to help people, there are going to be people who take advantage of that.
Sure.
But it's like, what's the alternative to that? Not being someone who is there for you people, and not being someone who works to build relationships, and you're not committed to the people that are important to you. Right? It's like,
well, I think Ayn Rand put it better, I think, than anybody that I've ever read. And I don't know if she has a book. I don't know if you've read it, but it's called the Virtue of Selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like, what would you like? How far does your altruism extend? If you were sitting on a pier and you saw a man drowning who you didn't know, would you jump in to save him at the risk to your own life? Right? Would you?
Yeah, I think probably.
I mean, if it was a hurricane, if there was a storm, a major storm, and you knew your chances were great if you jumped into these waters to save this guy, would you do it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I'm not saying it would be the right thing to do, but I think I probably would.
Yeah.
Just because I was raised the same way.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I don't, who's going to? Kind of thing. That probably isn't rationally the right thing to do, and I'll own that. But
I don't think most people would. I mean, we see it all the time, and on video, people getting beat up, and people just stand around and watch.
Now, if he was wearing a defund the IRS hat, I probably wouldn't.
Yeah,
he's probably a selfish tax cheat.
I wish I was. Yeah,
but. So what I do appreciate about Ayn Rand is these idealized characters that she creates. I think it's a healthy thing to have something to an ideal to strive for. And her characters are really this, I think, 20th century literary expression of the Vitruvian Man. And I think so much of her psychology is a reaction to being an independent person growing up in the USSR. And I will say, I don't think all of her characters have a whole lot of depth. It's just like the embodiment of a particular message.
Yep.
And her books were compelling to me as a young person, but one of the things that I fundamentally struggle with her message is this, the idea of the ego as the fountainhead of human progress. Because in a Freudian sense, the ego is the I.
Mm-hmm.
The ego is the identity. The ego is the thing that separates
Mm-hmm.
you from everything else and everyone else. And it's where a lot of our pain comes from.
Sure.
And when you think about some of those characters when they were engaged in some sort of artistic pursuit or some sort of meaningful work, that's sort of her ideal. I think there were even composers and musicians that lived in Galt's Gulch,
Mm-hmm.
right? I know when I'm engaged in those things, when I'm the happiest and when I feel like I'm doing the best work, my ego totally disappears.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm so fully immersed in whatever the work is. Sometimes 12 hours can go by and it feels like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is not ego driven.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentally. And like psychedelics have become the sort of popular topic in culture now. Partly because of people like Joe Rogan, but there's also real research.
Have you tried DMT?
There's also real research going on around psychedelics, and there's evidence that they can really help people with addiction. They can really help people with PTSD.
Absolutely.
I
I know people that microdose, and it helps. It seems to help them a lot with their depression. You know,
I know people that have had their entire lives turned around. Who wrote the book "Cleansing the Doors of Perception"?
Well,
I forget.
I know what you're talking about.
But it's we get stuck in certain modes in ways of thinking that are not necessarily healthy for us and are not necessarily representative really of reality. It's just how we've calibrated our filters.
Mm-hmm.
And so psychedelics can help to reset that default mode network that we call it default mode network. And so I completely forget where I was going with that. No. So psychedelics, like one of the things that people talk about is the ego death that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's somehow painful, but the most beneficial thing.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to run totally against everything that Ayn Rand's philosophy is sort of built on, or at least a fundamental premise of it. I think she takes in some other things from Aristotle that I think are helpful. So one of the things, there are no contradictions. Whenever there exists a contradiction, check your premises. That's something that's been helpful to me in my life, because it's like when you have things to contend with, a lot of the growth is that we have is in not just accepting things that we know to be untrue, because that it creates this internal cognitive dissonance just in our existence that I think leads to pathology in our lives. And then she talks about the psychological sin of evasion, which I think is huge. And then also she talks about relationships and how relationships are an exchange of value. So in a business, relationships, businesses are transactional. It's not to say that relationships should be transactional, but maybe more specific to say relationships are an exchange of values. And so I feel like thinking about people that way and thinking about my relationships that way has been something that's been helpful for me in life, and who I've built friendships with, who I've married. And it's, I think, helped me to lay a foundation based on things that are real and not superficial. If that makes sense.
No, yeah, sure. Yeah.
But anyway, that's my Ayn Rand thing. I haven't read those books in 15 years, but
yeah. That was all. I read The Virtue of Selfishness, I think, in 2017. But
really?
That's the last one I read, and I've read We the Living, which was her first novel. Have you read it?
I have.
Yeah, and
Oz had us read Anthem in high school.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I read Anthem. Yeah, and the reason I read Anthem is because of Rush.
The band?
Yeah, because 2112 is based off of.
Oh, that's right.
Anthem. Yeah. So Yeah, that's the whole reason I read Anthem.
That's
but
right.
but yeah, no, We the Living. I think I'll be honest with you. I never read The Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged. But We the Living is one of my favorite books of all time, and it just because it's autobiographical, So,
And I don't know how you can't sympathize for a person with her makeup growing up in the Soviet Union on a personal level.
Seriously, no, you can't. I mean, she knows how it was, So no, you can't argue with her. Yeah.
On a human level.
Oh sure. Yep.
So anyway, Ayn Rand. Let me ask you this: if you could have any job, what would it be?
Oof. If I could have any job, what would it be? I'll tell you what it would be. Yeah, it would be owning 100 acres in Montana, being a sustenance farmer.
Montana?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 100 acres of prairie land, being a sustenance farmer.
Would you have Wi-Fi or no?
What if it were up to me? No. I would be completely off the grid if it were up to me.
How would you watch baseball?
Battery powered radio. Yes. I wouldn't listen. I mean, we go back to what we were talking about before. There were times growing up where I hated the TV broadcasters. I mean, I love Chris Welsh, but I would just turn the volume down and turn the radio volume up.
Sure.
And watch it while I listen to the radio.
Sure. Well, that was better.
Yeah. Yeah.
We used to do the same thing with UK games in Kaywood, Ledford.
Oh yeah.
But I think, isn't there the delay now, so you can't sync it up?
Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 seconds, but I didn't even care. I could watch it happening before hearing what happened on the radio.
Do you still do that?
I didn't care. No, I don't do it. No. Yeah, unfortunately, but yeah.
You see the contradiction here between wanting to be a sustenance farmer and being someone who works in broadcast media.
Oh, absolutely. No, I know that my job exists in order to keep people from knowing what's going on in the real world. Okay? True. I know that that's why I have my job is for that very specific reason. Yes.
I think there's a little more to it than that, Jeremy Snead.
No, I mean, there's a little bit more to it. Yes.
I also don't want you to get fired right now.
No, the people I work with also know that that's why they have that job. So, no, I don't know if I don't know if they actually believe that, but I mean, I know that it's part of being in creative services. I don't know. I'm not saying it's 100% why. I mean, it's to get people to watch our news station so that the station makes money. But it's all a veil. So, yeah. I'm not afraid to admit it. I'll say it.
Well, I think there's a value to local network news when it comes
100%.
to like those community connections.
I was being half serious before, but I'm being 100% serious now. The local news is news. Mainstream news is not news, right?
It's competing agendas.
It's competing agendas. That's all it is. But local news, the local reporters are the hardest working people that I work with. They're out there busting tail every day, getting stories. They're the hardest people working people in news are the reporters. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with that. Was it Erica Bivens and the other anchor at WSAZ that got in a fight?
Oh, I think so.
And she's here now, right? I don't know why that popped into my mind. She's in Lexington, right?
I'm not sure. The name sounds super familiar, though. It's not at Fox. Yeah.
I don't know where she is. Okay.
Yeah. But I know what you're talking about.
So, I don't know. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know what you want to talk about. Did I ever tell you that I never remember before I bought my first house, and we had talked about it before, and I woke up one morning and there was like $3,000 in my bank account.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes. And I said, don't spend that because you need to be able to source that.
And I tried to source it, and I still have no idea where it came from. I don't know where it came from. I tried to find out where it came from. I just think I don't know how I feel about destiny or things just random or things just being planted or happening so that you can be able to do something. But I, to this day, still don't know where that money came from. It's never been taken back from me, you know. And all I know is that we were talking about me trying to get a house. I'd already talked to Cassie, I think, by that point, and her telling me what I
Correct.
needed. And,
Correct.
And after having that conversation with her, I thought, I'm never going to be able to get a house because I don't have any money and I'm poor. You know, I have no way to save any money with the wages that I currently have. And then that money, I just woke up one morning and I was like, where did this come from? And then I tell you, and I'm like, let's get a house. Yeah. And I think it was just within a few days we were, you know, looking at houses. Yeah.
That is so crazy.
I know.
You think it was your dad?
They would have to have known who I bank with, and even my account number. I would think. I don't know where it came from.
No, they can make a check payable to you
Yeah.
from their bank account. They don't have to have yours.
But he had no idea. He had no way of knowing where or who I banked with. You know?
So a friend of mine, I don't know if I ever told this story. A friend of mine gets a call one day that it's one of the bankers and they say that they just took $9,000 out of his savings account. And it's like, what? And apparently like a decade before, they had accidentally deposited money from some business who I guess had a big enough balance sheet that they didn't notice that money into that person's account, and they weren't super vigilant, and so they didn't really notice where it came from. I'm sure they probably looked at their balance statement one day, like, oh, I have more money than I thought I did. But apparently banks can just do that, and there's no statute of limitations on it. So I would always keep $3,000 in that same account.
Dude, I don't even have that account anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't even. I mean, they're lost. I guess.
Yes, I don't know what you do there.
Yeah. So, which you know,
What do you bank now?
Chase. Yeah. So
Um,
that was the Fifth Third before that. But yeah, I mean that pretty much, and it feels like so long ago, doesn't it? That was October of 2019.
that feels like a year ago.
Yeah, it was October of 2019, and November 13th, 2019 is when we put the offer in. That my bid was accepted, and we were supposed to close on December 13th, and didn't end up closing until December 27th. Yep. Yeah, it was an awful 2 weeks between December 13th and December 27th. Yeah,
It's a roller coaster.
it was. Yeah.
But I will say, like, helping you buy that house was one of the favorite things I've done in my job in the last 5 years.
Yeah. I'm so thankful to have had that house. Yeah. Especially when I sold it. Yeah.
Well, and that whole process was, the sale of your house and the purchase of the next one was very rewarding to me too.
Well, helping out your friend, you know. So, I mean, I feel like that, I mean, she was looking for a house, right? Anyway, and we were wanting to sell, and for that to line up to find somebody to let us live there after we sold it. I mean, I just think it all worked out perfectly. So,
yeah.
now, where would you be? Where would you be living, and what would your dream job be? Tell me that. I'm 100 acres in Montana, being a sustenance farmer with a transistor radio.
Transistor radio.
Yeah.
What song is that?
Is it old?
It's Rolling. It's Rolling Stones. It's definitely Rolling Stones, but I don't know what the song is.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about, but I can't.
Is
I can't
it
place it?
When you're sitting there in your silk upholstered chair, taking bets on Kentucky Derby Day.
And I don't know.
Is it Goodbye Ruby Tuesday?
Is that
I don't know.
Rolling Stones? No, that's the song.
No, that's Rolling Stones,
Yeah.
but there's a line about transistor radios in there. I don't know.
No. There you go.
But and I always sing that to myself like every morning on Derby Day.
Do you?
Even though it's not what the song's about at all.
Yeah.
No, it's not Ruby Tuesday. Send me dead flowers in the morning. Send me dead flowers by the mail.
I'm gonna be honest with you that I never really got into the Rolling Stones. I know.
Get out.
I mean, yeah. And my relationship with Guns N' Roses has never been good either. So,
That I can
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
I love Guns N' Roses, but that I sort of understand.
Yeah.
But like
I've seriously,
the Rolling Stones are foundational.
yeah, and I get that. I don't hate the Rolling Stones. I could just never get into them.
Mhm.
They have the one song, Corey, what's his name from Slipknot, did a cover of it a few years ago. It's got the female singer and she sings in the background.
Oh, Sympathy for the Devil.
No, it's one of
No.
their most famous. It's one of the most famous songs, and I'm having a brain fart. Give Me Shelter.
Oh yeah, great
Yeah.
song.
I love that song.
It's a
But that
great
might
song.
that might be Wild Horses is okay, but man, other than that, I don't know. Never got into them.
What is your favorite band that you wouldn't think I would think you like?
I don't know because I listen to so much. I listen to so many different types of music.
Mhm.
I mean, a band that I like that you wouldn't think that I like.
Mhm.
Oof, man.
Or
I
maybe
don't know.
Guilty Pleasure band.
A guilty pleasure band. I mean, I'll always be a Swiftie at heart.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
No kidding.
yeah. I love Taylor Swift. But man, guilty pleasure band.
Hot
I don't
take.
know.
I don't like her early music. I like her music now.
Really?
I know.
I'm kind of the opposite.
Well,
Yeah.
that's most people
Yeah.
with most bands. Oh,
Yeah.
I like the
Oh my
early
God.
stuff.
But dude, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna say this.
The Taylor Swift that visited the Paintsville Walmart,
Yeah.
not so much my thing. Like 1989 Taylor Swift,
Yeah.
post 1989.
Oh,
I'm
no.
into it.
No, it's all good. It's all great stuff. It's all great stuff. I just like her earlier stuff better. So I'm gonna say this on record for everybody here. Saint Anger's a great album. And I don't-
100%.
And I don't care what anybody says.
Completely agree.
I don't care what the snare sounds like. It's a great album.
I like what the snare sounds like.
I do too. I think it was innovative. Who else is doing that? You know?
Yeah, and I think it was. you know what the knock on Metallica was before Saint Anger?
Napster.
Sellouts.
Yeah, sellouts. And you know what Jason Newsted said? He's
We
like, we
sold
sold
out
out
every night.
We sold out every arena
No,
every night.
But seriously, do you think Saint Anger is a sellout album?
No.
That's the most like honest punk rock
Yeah.
thing. Like, it's hard to comprehend something being more honest than that.
Yeah.
And true to where
Seriously.
they were.
Yeah. Like, yeah. I mean, even I don't cringe at all watching the documentary.
No.
You know, I know James hated doing it.
Mhm.
He made that abundantly clear, but it's one of my favorite documentaries ever. Is the Saint Anger, or is the Some Kind of Monster documentary?
I'll go further. Love Load and Reload.
Yeah, seriously.
I think I understand people who were into thrash
Of
and
course.
who were into Metallica during that time, but also thought they were a great melodic rock band.
Yeah.
And that was just that step,
Mhm.
taking that a little bit further past the Black Album,
Right.
which, they're back to thrash now, and they
Yeah.
have been for a decade. I think it's cool that they made those records.
Mhm.
Some of my favorite '90s music. I mean,
Yeah.
those records were a deviation for Metallica, but they totally fit in the context of a lot of music and grunge music from the '90s that a lot of people who are the same people that say they don't like Load and Reload
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you can listen to Stone Temple Pilots and then listen to Load and Reload, and it makes total sense.
Alice and Jane's. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So, and I'll also say this too about Bob Rock. I love the sound of the records that he
Yeah.
produced.
Seriously.
There are a lot of bands
Sonically, they're
correct. There are a lot of bands that he produced where maybe he just did one record, and a lot of times it's my favorite record to listen to.
Yeah.
I love what Rick Rubin does for bands in the creative process and sort of the vibe and the environment that he's able to create. And I think Rick Rubin has rescued some artists who are sort of lost in the wilderness and don't know how to sort of find themselves. But I think there's really something to be said for just a good, tight song and a great sounding record. And I think that's what Bob Rock does.
Yeah.
I would love a scenario where a lot of those bands that we grew up listening to are working together with those two guys.
Yeah.
It would never happen. There's
Seriously.
too many egos, but I would
No,
love
yeah.
that scenario.
So, Bob Rock knows how to push. He knows how to push musicians in directions that he knows they need to go, but they don't know that they need to go that direction yet. You know, so I mean, you see it all over with Kurt Hammett in Year and a Half in the Life of Metallica while they're making the Black Album. You know, if you go back and you watch the video of the first solo he came up with for the Unforgiven, it was crap.
Yeah,
it was the worst. It was like the worst solo he'd ever written up to that point.
Yeah,
you know, and then he comes back a day later and it's the greatest. It might be his greatest Metallica solo he's ever written. You know,
and he got the most out of James on that record.
Oh, 100%. It's just the fun is because Bob was like, James wrote this beautiful song, and this is what you come up with. This is how you're treating James after James came up with this. You know, just totally dogging Kurt. Yeah. You know, and Kurt looks like he wants to cry.
Give me the Bobby Knight treatment.
Yeah.
Chip Williams treatment.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So.
Which is funny because I think generationally Kurt would respond to that, but I don't think everyone would. And I think he knew what button to press with what person.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's really something to be said for that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you know how much I love Our Lady Peace.
Dude, I mean, I don't love Our Lady Peace.
Oh, I do.
But,
with all my heart and soul.
But man, no, I've always loved their singles. Yeah, always. Yeah. I don't feel guilty about listening to Our Lady Peace at all.
Well, no. Yeah. I mean, they're a truly creative like there's a lot of substance. They're a radio rock band, but they're a substantive band.
You say the same thing about Third Eye Blind, you know.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it makes sense that the same person would like both of those bands.
Yeah.
I would say top 5 concerts I've been to, except if not maybe my favorite concert I've ever been to was Our Lady Peace 2003 on the Gravity Tour, which was the album that they made with Bob. And it was the album that everyone accused him of selling out.
Of course, right.
But as far as I'm concerned,
about Motley Crue.
As far as I'm concerned, that's their Black Album.
Yeah.
Because like I think everything they made after that was worse.
Yeah.
But they were just right. They were on fire, and they were right in that happy medium space. And I'll never forget. It's like my friend / guitar teacher when I was a kid, Phil, was at that concert with me at the House of Blues. We were front row, and dude, I can tell you what guitars they played that day. I can tell you what the set list was. I remember that like it was such a core memory for me, and for so long I wish I could go back and experience it. And then probably a year or two later, I went to the Sam Goody in Corbin, Kentucky, and I would always I was the nerd who was getting on Billboard and looking months in advance on what albums were coming out on what Tuesdays. And I would go to Ashland to FYE, you know.
Oh God!
I'll go as far as to say I was the first person in the tri-state area to own a copy of Saint Anger.
Yeah,
I was outside of FYE for a good hour before they opened, thinking that there would be a line. Of course, I was the only person there.
Yeah, which is crazy. But that was the height of illegal downloading and burning. So everybody had already downloaded the album by the time that you got to FYE.
I guess that's right.
So,
but I went into Sam Goody. And I saw this poster on the wall of Our Lady Peace live at Calgary. I didn't even know they were making a live album. And I went back and listened to it. It was just a few shows after the show that we were at. And it's like identical to the show that we were at. And to this day, like every year when the weather warms up, I'll listen to Morning View and I'll listen to that album again. And I always relive that concert. Even the, here, actually, you want to pull it up? I don't know if you can.
We're not connected on here.
What?
Yep.
What do you mean?
We only have these 2 cameras. We don't have internet. So.
Oh.
But that's okay.
Well, we can.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, going back to Metallica in the '90s, that's the reason why that's why nobody remembers Slayer in the '90s, is because Slayer. I don't know anything about Slayer in the '90s because they didn't deviate from what they were doing before, and they never really have. You know,
that's a good point.
It's why nobody remembers Anthrax in the '90s. It's why nobody, Testament and Exodus, they disappeared in the '90s. Testament came back in 1999, and released a great album. But yeah, I mean that's why Metallica and Megadeth. That's why anybody only remembers them because They were
Because they
really,
stayed relevant.
they were the only ones that were willing to change their sound, you know? Yeah. So,
And honestly, I think there's something to be said for that. I don't think having artistic integrity and being genuine really is defined by not adapting to what's relevant at the time. I think in any creative endeavor, you have a certain framework that you work within, and it's how you work within those constraints and what you make within that defines, I think, your authenticity.
sure.
Whereas like I don't like if someone like when Bob Dylan went electric, he was still a serious artist,
Yeah.
right? Everyone was upset about that, but I don't think you can really, in retrospect, argue that Bob Dylan was selling out.
No, he just did what he wanted to do.
Yeah,
I think, you know, people are going to listen to Bob Dylan if they want to listen to Bob Dylan. And I think, you know, he gets that.
And
He's
I think,
you know,
I think if you're just following trends and creating like the most generic example of just like whatever that bro country beat is, then
dude, don't get me started.
and just
don't get me started
beer
on
and shorts and girls and trucks and fishing and
beach
and all
country.
that. I think if you're just playing to those themes, you know, it's okay to be skeptical of that. But I also think just because you're making a country rock record with a lot of compression that sounds modern, you can still make a really good record with good songs that way.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, but I think people are turned off by the sound of things versus the quality of the artistic endeavor.
No, I mean, there are things that come out now that are immediate turn off to me if it sounds too polished. I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe it's just because we grew up, you know, in the 90s listening to the most amazing alternative rock music ever. And then compared to now, I mean, anybody can plug a guitar into their home and make the most clean sounding record that they want, you know?
Yeah, I
Just
think
put in
that's
MIDI drums or whatever.
That's
but
true. I think that's also true. Is
it's almost like it doesn't sound human to a point, and that's what is a turnoff for me, is because it doesn't
Correct.
sound human, you know?
correct.
Yeah.
It depends on how much you lean into it, though. Like, if you're trying to make a record that has human-sounding songs, but the record doesn't sound human, that's terrible.
Yeah.
But there's good electronic music that
Oh,
sync to
100%.
the grid because you're sort of working with a different palette. It's not about the swing or the feel.
sure.
It's about the textures,
Yeah.
right? And the immersion. It's really just how you use the sonic palette and structure that you're going with. It's when you take something that's supposed to be human and real and make it sound less than human, right? It's,
Yeah.
So I don't know. 15 minutes.
No, I mean, we don't have to press. I think it's been a great talk.
It has.
It's been a good talk.
It's always good to
So,
catch up with you, man.
And I can't believe you never knew about much early childhood. Yeah.
We've just never talked about it.
Yeah, just never talked about it.
And we didn't, we weren't in school together before that.
I was a Fallsburger.
Right. So, but I just tell you, man, I'm grateful to have you here close, and I'm grateful to have you to do this with, and it's just always good to catch up with you, man.
Yeah. You too, Sam.
All right. See
It's
you.
been a pleasure.